Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastya Chadeshatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakapatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All right, so this evening we are doing mantras 10 and 11. We started mantra 10 last night, of course. So we'll carry on. We just did the first paragraph. We'll carry on with mantra 10, and then we will complete mantra 11 also. And we mentioned last night it might possibly take us a little bit more than this hour that we normally have. We'll do our best to finish within an hour, and it should be possible, but anyway, let's hope for the best. All right, so mantra 10. Well, we are in the third part of Sri Isopanisad. Third part is from mantra 9 to mantra 14, although it is divided into two parts, from mantra 9 to mantra 11, and then from 12 to 14. So the subject of the whole part, from 9 to 14, is the absolute and the relative. The spiritual, the transcendental, and the material. And this section that we're going to be completing this evening, subsection whatever, 10 and 11, is discussing the absolute and the relative in terms of knowledge. Okay, so let us recite mantra 10. And then we'll carry on from paragraph 2. Anyad evahur vidyaya, anyad ahur avidyaya, iti shushruma dhiranam, yenastad vichachakshire. Translation: the wise have explained that one result is derived from the culture of knowledge, and that a different result is obtained from the culture of nescience. Nescience, of course, means ignorance. I mean, it's actually a little bit interesting word, nescience. You can take it to mean not science, something like that. Yeah, not science, it's ignorance. Okay, so last night, then, we went through the first paragraph, which is quite a major paragraph, actually. It was really, really big. There's a lot in it. We won't go through it again. But basically what is going on in paragraph 1 of the purport, it's paraphrasing Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, verses 8 to 12, in which the different component elements of knowledge, or in a broader sense, the culture of knowledge, because that term is used in the verse itself, in the translation, Prabhupada's used this term, the culture of knowledge, not just knowledge as an ABC 1, 2, 3, just facts and figures, but the culture means more or less, it means at least something like the way of life, which is conducive to the development of real knowledge, means this spiritual transcendental knowledge. Yeah, not just read lots of books and repeat things until they're fixed in your head, but the whole way of life, which if you live like that, then you will just naturally develop spiritual knowledge, and spiritual knowledge and spiritual realization, not just facts and figures like just not knowledge like book knowledge, but you'll come to perceive the reality of these different points. I'll just mention a couple. Here's the first one, that one should become a perfect gentleman or gentle lady and learn to give proper respect to others. This is the first way or first part of cultivating knowledge. You wouldn't think so. I mean, many people wouldn't. To become, a cultured, a decent person, well-mannered person, a pleasant person, a kind person like that, a very respectful person. If you become like that, it becomes easier to develop spiritual knowledge and realization, to actually become aware of the reality of the knowledge, not just the sort of the collection of information. So that was one. Then another one is the second one. One shouldn't pose oneself as a religionist simply for name and fame. In general, name and fame are not conducive to knowledge. Attachment to name and fame, if you're like that, if you're attached to name and fame, it'll be more difficult for you to really grasp spiritual knowledge and to really just have it become part of your nature. So that was a couple of examples. We went through them last night. You've all got them there. You can go through them when you like. But yeah, that's very important. So now we come on to the second paragraph of the purport. And Srila Prabhupada puts it, the same point, very nicely. These 18 items combine to form a gradual process by which real knowledge can be developed. And this is what Prabhupada says next, is it's from Bhagavad Gita actually, that except for these 18 items, all other methods are considered to be in the category of nescience or ignorance. Sure, that's amazing, isn't it? That's so powerful. Yeah. And then Srila Prabhupada goes on to refer to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We've all heard of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of our great acharyas. And he said that all forms of material knowledge are just part of Maya, illusion. And that if you culture them, develop them, you become no better than an ass, a donkey. Yes, a well-educated, university-educated donkey. And there's the song, Vidyara Vilase, I referred to last night. I forgot that I had put some of it in the notes here. So let me just read a few verses from this Vidyara Vilase. Vidya means, of course, knowledge or education, and vilas means pastimes. In other words, he's called the song My Pastimes of Education, when I got educated. Jada Vidya Jato Mayara Vaibhava Tomara Bhajani Bada Moha Janamiya Anitya Samsare Jivake Karaye Gada, or Gede, they pronounce it, I think. You understand Hindi? Gede, isn't it? Geda. Geda is Hindi for donkey. Yes. Or Bengali also. Se Geda hoye samsarera boja bhavinu aneka kala. So what it means is, this is the translation of what we just read. Knowledge of this world is knowledge born of your illusory energy. He's addressing Krishna. Yeah. It impedes devotional service and makes an ass of the eternal soul by encouraging his infatuation with this temporary world. Here is one such ass who for so long has carried on his back the burden of material existence. Now in my old age, for want of the power to enjoy, nothing pleases me. And at least one thing I can say about myself, if you don't mind, is that by the time I left school, I could have stayed on for another year, but many of them do, an extra year. But I'd had enough. I had had enough, and I just didn't want to go through it anymore. I thought it was just a big waste of time, material education. Really, I really did. And I wanted to become a writer at that time. That's what I thought. So my father arranged for me to get a job on one of the big newspapers. Anyway, so at least I had that realization. I was lacking many other realizations. So yeah, okay, so let's carry on. Bhagavatam says, one who has accepted this body, the combination of bile, mucus, and air as the self, is an ass. So, Prabhupada makes an interesting point that some materialistic politicians in spiritual guise decry the present system of civilization as satanic. But unfortunately, they do not care about the culture of real knowledge as described in Bhagavad Gita. Yes. Thus, they are unable to change the satanic culture. Okay, so we got to carry on now. Move along a little. Let's go into paragraph 3. And this is interesting. The theme here, at least an important part of the theme, is how in modern society, even youngsters, it says a boy, but I think it includes girls too. They think themselves, Prabhupada says, self-sufficient, that, we don't need old people. That's what I felt I don't need my parents. I don't need anything. So when I was 18, I moved out. Yeah, oh well, anyway. So like this, Prabhupada says, because the youngsters are getting the wrong type of education, means this just very materialistic education aimed at preparing people for jobs. That's what it is. Not to help them understand life and what is this world, who are we, these foundational questions, but just how to get a job. So because they're educated like that, Prabhupada says the boys and the girls too are giving their elders headaches. Yes. So therefore, Isopanisad strongly warns that the culture of knowledge is very different from the culture of real knowledge. The culture of nescience is different from the culture of real knowledge, spiritual knowledge. And the universities are centers of nescience, centers of ignorance only. Scientists are making lethal weapons. Students are generally not given instruction on brahmacharya, celibacy, self-control, higher values. Yeah, they don't have faith in scripture. So you get some religious principles taught in some places, but just for name and fame, not for like real practical purification. So Prabhupada concludes by saying, thus, there is animosity, not only in social and political fields, but in the field of religion also. And paragraph 4, nationalism is sweeping the world. You know, Prabhupada, this is back in 1970, 50 years ago, but now it's even worse. It's even worse now. Anyway, I'm not going to become a political commentator, but I don't think I need to, because I think that you're all aware enough of what is going on in the world to know that even, as Prabhupada explains, even though this planet is like a little speck of dust, a little dust particle floating in the air, but people get so carried away. This is my land. It's not your land. So Prabhupada says in this, we're in the 4th paragraph, the drivers of our spaceships may be very proud of their achievements, but they do not consider the supreme driver of these greater, more gigantic spaceships called planets. Yeah. And that's Krishna, of course, and the demigods. Paragraph 5. So there are innumerable suns, planetary systems, but we, little people, Prabhupada points out, us little infinitesimal people, we're trying to dominate these planets. You know, they want to go to the moon, to Mars, apparently. And what are they going to do? Try to exploit those places. After we've, you know, abused this planet so badly that it cannot really produce properly any longer. Let's go and do the same thing to the moon. Yeah. Let's go and exploit it. Yeah, just take everything. So, yeah. So we're trying to dominate. This is our mood, the human beings, I mean, the materialists. Let us dominate. And as a result, they take birth and death, and in between as they're living, they become frustrated. They become very frustrated. People used to live 100 years, Prabhupada says, now it's less. Yeah. So due to the culture of ignorance, they've created their own countries and try to separate from other countries. But it's very difficult. It's very difficult. So in this way, different countries have become sources of anxiety for each other. And Prabhupada concludes the paragraph, more than 50% of a nation's energy is devoted to defense measures and thus spoiled. No one cares for the cultivation of real knowledge, yet people are falsely proud of being advanced in both material and spiritual knowledge. They're falsely proud, but they're actually not advanced, particularly in spiritual knowledge. Paragraph 6. So the Isopanisad warns us about this faulty type of this modern educational system. Isopanisad warns us. It's ignorance. It's going to make you into a fool. It'll turn you into a machine. And therefore, we should actually study Isopanisad, and we should study Bhagavad Gita. Now, an interesting point is made in this paragraph 6. You're with us. You know where paragraph 6 is? Yes, so interesting point that the question is, if this real knowledge is so important, this spiritual transcendental knowledge about life, how to live life properly, this culture of knowledge, the way of life of knowledge and the actual knowledge itself and the realization, if it's so important, then where are we going to get it from? Well, should we just have the teachers in the existing schools and universities just add another subject to the curriculum? Real knowledge, spiritual knowledge, and for the rest of the time they just carry on as they were. No thanks. So Prabhupada explains here in the purport that this knowledge, this higher level knowledge, must be acquired from a dhira. Dhira literally means a sober person, very mature, very responsible, and very sober. And Prabhupada paraphrases that by saying, a dhira is one who is not disturbed by material illusion. He or she, they can handle it and remain focused and not get sort of flustered and affected by the very widespread and actually very powerful mundane so-called knowledge, the potency of ignorance. And Prabhupada goes on that you cannot become a dhira, you cannot become an undisturbed person, a sober person, unless you're spiritually realized. You can't just do one of these management guru courses. like, what's his name? Stephen Covey. You heard of Stephen Covey? Really? You heard of Stephen Covey? Good. He's a management guru. How to look after your people, how to develop your business, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But such a person cannot really help. So Prabhupada concludes the paragraph. Adhira realizes that the material body and mind he has acquired by chance through material association are but foreign elements. Therefore, he simply makes the best use of a bad bargain. So it means that this person, the dhira, the sober person, undisturbed person, very stable and spiritually focused person, is utilizing the material body and mind. Not that they're just negligent of them and they just don't care and they act like those things don't exist, but they're using the material body and mind, in this whole culture of knowledge. These different 18 points which were listed out there from Bhagavad Gita, listed out in our first paragraph, engaging the body and mind in the whole process. And in this way, even though the material body and the material mind are really, they're really not very nice at all. But as Prabhupada says, making the best use of a bad bargain. Yeah, because what can you do? We have this material gross body and subtle body, the mind. You can't just ignore them. So then, yes, paragraph 7. Well, Prabhupada goes on to the same point, how the material body and mind are bad bargains for the spiritual living entity, because actually we have, the way we can see it is that we have spiritual bodies and spiritual minds. At the moment, they're covered over by the material body and the material mind, but still they're there underneath. The spiritual body is there. The spiritual mind is there. Yes. So compared to our spiritual body and spiritual mind, the material body and material mind are bad bargains. As Prabhupada says, that the material world is dead. These material bodies we have are dead. These bodies are dead. They are just animated, lent life by the living spirit soul. Otherwise, as soon as the soul leaves the body, then the body shows its dead nature just straight away, on the spot. Yes. So it is actually, Prabhupada explains, it is the living souls which manipulate the dead lumps of matter, the material bodies, and they give the appearance of life to our material bodies. Our material bodies appear to be alive, but actually they're just animated by the soul. An example we can give, which we've mentioned before, is if you have a modern watch. Have you got a watch? Oh, you got that. And you too. Okay. Anyway, if you got a watch, or if you got a phone, which you get your time from, it is it is working on the basis of a battery. And you think, oh, look at, the numbers are changing and all the whatever else is there. It's really good. But as soon as you take the battery out on the spot, it's done, it's finished. So really the essence of it is the battery. So similarly, the essence of our lives in this world, the essence is the spirit soul. So, right. So it is the living souls who are moving this world, not the material bodies. So Prabhupada concludes the paragraph, the Dhiras have come to know all these facts by hearing them from superior authorities and have realized this knowledge by following the regulative principles. So this is the idea. You hear about these things, you live the way of life, and then you come to see that actually it's true. And an important thing which helps give you the potency to see the truth of it all is following the regulative principles, which Prabhupada then discusses in the 8th or second to last paragraph. Okay, so, it helps to follow the regulative principles because it gives clarity of mind. Your mind will not be contaminated, polluted by all sorts of illicit ideas, very mundane, sensual types of ideas of enjoying supposedly on the material level. The regulative principles keep us free from all of that. So Prabhupada begins the 8th paragraph that to follow the regulative principles, one has to take shelter of the spiritual master. And the messages from the spiritual master, the regulative principles which are given by the spiritual master. And this all comes down through disciplic succession, not, as Prabhupada says, in the hazardous way of nescient education. So if you want to become a dhira, a sober person, undisturbed, the only way to do it is by hearing from the bona fide spiritual master. And Prabhupada gives the example of Arjuna. He became a dhira. In the beginning, he wasn't. In the beginning, he was all disturbed about his relatives and his friends and what to do and all this. So he was not dhira. He was not undisturbed. He was very disturbed. But then he took shelter of Krishna. Krishna became his spiritual master. He heard from Krishna, and he became a dhira. He became undisturbed. So Prabhupada concludes the paragraph. Thus the perfect disciple must be like Arjuna, and the spiritual master must be as good as the Lord himself. This is the process of learning vidya, knowledge, from the dhira, the undisturbed. And okay, then last paragraph, I think I'll just read the last paragraph. An adhira, one who has not undergone the training of a dhira, cannot be an instructive leader. Modern politicians who pose themselves as dhiras are actually adhiras, and one cannot expect perfect knowledge from them. They're simply busy seeing to their own remuneration in dollars and cents. How then can they lead the mass of people to the right path of self-realization? Thus, one must hear submissively from a dhira in order to attain actual education.